Buenas and half a day, everybody. Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I now call this hearing for the Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs to order. The time is now 9 o'clock. It is Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. To those joining us in the hearing room and to those watching online, thank you for taking time to be a part of today's discussion. We have two items on the agenda this morning. First, we will consider the appointment of Dr. Geoffrey Galgo to serve as the physician representative on the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. We will also be reviewing the Guam Memorial Hospital's proposed new fee package dated December 10th, 2025. In compliance with the open government law, notice of this hearing was provided to all senators, stakeholders, and members of the media. The notice of this hearing was also posted on the Guam Legislature website and the Guam Public Notice Portal. All materials related to today's hearing have been shared in the committee drive, and printed copies are available upon request. For those who may want to review this hearing later, a recording will also be available on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the members of the committee that are present, Senator Sean Gumatautau. Before we move forward, just a quick reminder about how today's hearing will run. Each senator will be given 5 minutes for questions or comments, and we kindly ask those who testify to please speak clearly and keep their remarks concise so we can hear from everyone who wishes to participate. And with that, we will go ahead and begin with the first item on today's agenda, the appointment of Dr. Geoffrey Galgo. If there's anybody here who would like to provide testimony on his appointment, please come to the table. We will begin with Dr. Tom Shea. I know that you have a very busy schedule, so if you could please give your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sean as well. My name is Dr. Thomas Shea. I've been on Guam for nearly 30 years, come August, so I've been here a long time, so I know the environment here on Guam. Dr. Galgo has known me since he's been to Guam, and we both served in the military. I don't need his CV to know who he is. And I'm here in full support of his confirmation for the Guam Medical Board. I know Dr. Galgo as an honest and pretty forthright person throughout his career that I've known him. He tried to stay out of controversy, unlike myself, which is good in a way. He's not a yes man, and I know that he's going to serve honorably, and I've always talked to him about being appointed to certain government boards, and I know that he is not at the service of the senators or the service of the governor. When he gets appointed to the board, I'm sure he's serving at the pleasure of the people of Guam and to protect the safety and the healthcare system here on the island. Other than that, I don't have much to say negatively about Dr. Galgo, so I'll keep it short. Within the next 30 seconds or a minute, if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer, but I had to run back to my clinic right afterwards.
I don't have any questions for you, Senator.
Okay, may I be excused?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Shea. We'll begin to my right.
My turn. Thank you, Senator. Good morning, Senator Gumatauta, Senator Matanane. My name's Mildred Ekfaji. I did submit testimony in support of Dr. Galgo's appointment to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, and if I may, I'd like to read the letter that I wrote to you. Okay, I'm here to offer strong support for the nomination of Dr. Geoffrey P. Galgo to serve as a member of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. I have had the privilege of knowing Dr. Galgo both as a patient and a friend for the past 30+ years. During that time, he has cared for me and my family and my two youngest children, who are now 35 and 31 years old, practically grew up in his clinic. Over the years, I have seen firsthand the dedication, professionalism, and compassion that Dr. Galgo brings to the practice of medicine. As a physician, Dr. Galgo consistently demonstrates careful judgment, professionalism, and respect for patients. He takes the time to listen and explain medical issues clearly ensuring that patients feel informed and supported in making decisions about their health. What has always stood out to me most is the way Dr. Galgo treats his patients as whole persons. He always asks, "How are you feeling?" both physically and mentally, recognizing that good health involves more than simply addressing symptoms. In every interaction, Dr. Galgo not only brings medical expertise to the patient, but also a genuine sense of humanity. There are many doctors who see patients as little more than another medical chart or a number in their case management system. With Dr. Galgo, however, the experience is entirely different. You hear and feel the tone of his concern and humanity, and then the benefit of his medical voice and expertise. That combination of compassion and professional skill is rare and deeply meaningful to those in his care. Dr. Galgo is a true professional in every sense of the word. In many ways, he embodies the principles reflected in the 7 habits of highly effective people, demonstrating integrity, responsibility, empathy, and a commitment to continual improvement. These qualities are evident in the way he interacts with patients, colleagues, and the broader community. So many of us depend on Dr. Galgo for our care and guidance that we patiently wait for him to return when he takes a much-deserved rest or vacation. That willingness of us as patients to wait speaks volumes about the trust and confidence the community places in him. Dr. Galgo also runs a highly efficient clinic where patients are treated with respect and professionalism. Just as importantly, I witness how Dr. Galgo treats his staff with kindness and fairness, fostering a workplace environment built on mutual respect and teamwork. This leadership style reflects the type of thoughtful and principled approach that would be invaluable in a board setting. Beyond his clinical setting, I have come to appreciate Dr. Galgo as a person of sound character and thoughtful perspective. He approaches issues with fairness, patience, and a strong sense of responsibility, traits that would serve any medical board well. I'm confident that Dr. Galgo would bring both professional expertise and ethical leadership to the role. For these reasons, I strongly support Dr. Galgo's nomination, and we believe him to be an excellent addition to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. So just a maasi for your kind consideration.
Thank you, Mildred.
You're
Brianna?
welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Brianna Sablan, the Acting Administrator out of the Health Professional Licensing Office with the Department of Public Health and Social Services. I read into the record for testimony on behalf of Director Ariola. Hafaday Senator Salas Matanane and esteemed senators of the 38th Guam Legislature, I am writing today to express my strong support for the appointment of Dr. Geoffrey P. Galgo to serve as the physician representative on the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. As the Director of the Department of Public Health and Social Services, I am acutely aware of the critical role the GBME plays in safeguarding the health and social services. Safeguarding the health of our island community. The board requires members who possess not only clinical excellence, but also a deep-seated commitment to ethical standards and the administrative foresight necessary to navigate our evolving healthcare landscape. Dr. Galgo's work within our medical community, several key attributes stand out. Dr. Galgo has maintained a reputation for excellence in patient care, demonstrating a balance of technical skill and genuine compassion that reflects the best of Guam's medical profession. He understands that individual patient outcomes are inseparably linked to broader systemic health policies. His perspective will be invaluable in ensuring that licensing and regulatory standards keep pace with modern medical practices. The Department of Public Health and Social Services relies on a strong, functional Guam Board of Medical Examiners to ensure that every practitioner on our island meets the highest caliber of professional conduct. I am confident that Dr. Galgo will uphold these standards with the utmost diligence. His appointment is a positive step towards strengthening our local healthcare infrastructure. I urge this committee and the 38th Guam Legislature to move forward with his confirmation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. Undunkalu Nesizoas Maasi, Teresasi Areola, Director.
Thank you, Brianna. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues, Senator Chris Duenas, as well as Senator Telo Tadigui. Thank you for being here. Thank you. If there's no one else here to provide testimony, Dr. Galgo, you may introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to accept this appointment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak and have the platform to present myself to the panel of the Committee of Health as well as Veterans Affairs. I come for you today because I'm going to be considered as a new member, hopefully with your confirmation in the near future, to be a physician representative for the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. I have a lot of good ideas, and I hope that I can provide good input so that we can provide good quality professional as well as public reassurance that we are on the ball to address the ailing problems that may affect the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, in particular those of the many complaints that have been set forth and presented by the public. I'm here to address that and hopefully provide some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galgo. We're going to proceed now with questions from the committee and the panel up here. I'll start with a couple before turning it over. You've practiced medicine on Guam, I'd say about for several years, and you're currently the medical director, correct, of Guam Medical Care? From your experience practicing here since the late 1990s, what do you believe are the biggest challenges facing physicians and patients on Guam today?
Thank you for allowing me to answer this question. And first of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the panel here today. Chairperson Senator Sabrina Salas, who's the chair for the Committee of Health and Veterans Affairs, Senator Gumatauto, as well as Senator Chris Duenas, and our esteemed member of the Guam Legislature, Senator Telo Tadigui. With regards to the problems that we face as a fragile healthcare system here on Guam, is that we, as a community of physicians, if you look at the national statistics, if you look at the U.S. mainland, there's roughly around 180 to 200 physicians per 100,000 population, as compared to Guam, which is around 120 per 100,000 population. So you can see that a huge discrepancy. We're less than half that of the numbers that are needed in order to reach even at par with the U.S. mainland. So therefore, we do definitely have a shortage of physicians on Guam. So for every lost physician, whether it be due to disciplinary actions such as a suspension for acts that may be unbecoming to a physician, this is something that we really have to carefully look into through careful investigation, through careful review, in the process of peer review from their specialty counterparts, and then maybe even actually get some public input from the public in order to address these complaints, in order to provide quality care for our physicians, so that we can take care of the needs of our patients here on Guam.
Thank you for that, and I'm glad you kind of touched on it because during the previous confirmation hearings for others who have come before us to serve on the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, that has been one of the issues, and it's also been reported in the media about these long delays with complaints that have filed with the GBME. So what are your ideas, more specifically, and suggestions to resolve these longstanding complaints?
Well, since I am currently not being confirmed as of this point, and hopefully I will soon get your confirmation with the blessing of this panel and also the blessing of the Congress. Although I may be having multiple years of practice, up to 30 years of being in the trenches, digging day in and day out, grinding, seeing patients from day to day, you know, I really thought that it was going to come to the point where I'm actually going to consider retiring since I've almost practiced almost 3 decades. But there came a moment in time where the governor of Guam gave me the opportunity to serve as a physician representative by nominating me to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. So during this time, it gives me a fresh inspiration to continue on with my practice and to serve the board to the best if I can in order to effect change. Now, although I'm new and it may possibly maybe ruffle feathers to the current board members of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, I have maybe at least 4 suggestions that may come into mind that may hopefully improve the accountability as well as the public trust so that we can serve the public for better safety as well as transparency. One of the first things that I would like to consider doing is to, and I might ruffle feathers to the Department of Public Health and Social Services, but I think that the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, we sit under the umbrella of public health. And one of the reasons why I wanted to consider stressing that the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, or otherwise known as a GBME, be an autonomous agent is because of the red tape and bureaucracy that we have to do in order to get things done. And that's why we're probably seeing many delays with regards to addressing complaints, investigation, and even applying appropriate discipline for those that are in question for physicians. Now, by doing this, I was thinking about mirroring what the CNMI is doing, as what they're doing right now is they have a Unified Health Professions Licensing Board. So right now, what we have right now, we do have a health professions licensing office. However, this is found under the umbrella of the Department of Public Health. Now, if we decide to do a unified health professions licensing board, we only get just the core health professions, and that includes the committee on the Board of Dentistry, the Board of Nursing, the Board of Allied Health, Guam Board of Medical Examiners, and so forth. The only 2 that I did look under when I was looking under the website of the HPLO site is that of cosmetology as well as emergency services. And I think that we should just deal with the core health medical boards, mainly for the reasons that cosmetology probably is maybe considered and falls under environmental because it entails the sanitation as well as the checkups for those that may possibly have tuberculosis, screening for infectious disease. And secondly, for EMS, I think it could be either fall under the Department of the Fire Department or elsewhere, or even be part of public health. But with all these other core institutions of healthcare professionals, I think that we can combine them all in one to make the health professional unified licensing office so that we can have a proper staff, proper budget, and then also get the necessary resources. Because a lot of the times, many of the members, not only just the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, the nursing examiners, they're saying that they have the lack of resources. And in order to get these resources available, we have to basically ask the director of the public health in order for just to get maybe a rim of paper or to borrow a part-time investigator from the AG's office, or even getting outside experts in order to fly in them to provide peer review in order to help review the complaints that become presented to our medical board. That's one item that I'd like to address, and hopefully maybe you can take this into consideration and possibly approve something in the coming months. With this, having this unified healthcare physician licensing office, what I like to do is at least possibly even borrow from public health, and make sure that we have at least a medical director and maybe 2 full-time staffs. But more importantly, we should have either a full-time or part-time investigator. This is key to solving a lot of our issues with regards to complaints that are coming from the public. A private investigator, not from the AG's office, but an independent private investigator that's part of our board, and then also being borrowed to the other boards, such as the nursing board and others, will be allowed to take their time in order to address all the complaints coming from the different core allied health professions, including the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. And this way that all these backup complaints, as I was viewing in one of the prior public hearing sessions, up to 80 cases that were either unresolved or have not been addressed in public. And I was hoping, and I'm not sure if these cases are even true or not, because I don't have purview since I'm not currently sitting on the board. But rest assured, if I do get confirmed to the board, I will look into that and make sure that these 80 plus or so cases do get addressed. And then aside from that, with regards to funding, yes, we do get funding from the licensing of physicians as well as allied health professionals, and all that health fees will be used as part of the funding in order to sustain our operations. But the last thing I would like to do with regards to the Unified Healthcare Professions Program is to maybe request for either the legislature or the governor to at least provide a little seed money, since it's going to be considered as a new agency, of maybe probably $25,000 to $15,000 startup as a one-time payment, so that we can adequately produce a successful first year and hopefully succeeding successful operations for our agency.
That was one. Was one you said you had 4?
Well, the other 2 I can probably, the other 3 I can probably make a very quick summary to expedite this panel so we can conclude in a timely manner. Secondly, if you look into the website of the HPLO, Guam Board of Medical Examiners, there is a site where you can actually do a complaint, but those complaints are never being publicized. They're not transparent. And since we have modern IT available on the island, we can make a small tab in the website among complaints. Instead of being hidden, we can start by making a tab by starting a dashboard. So even if we have complaints that go as far as 2020, as I was hearing in prior public hearing events, that we will start by making a case number for the initial cases that were done since 2020, assign a case number, say whether it's open or resolved, and then without making any specific identifiers so that it can be possibly used as a means of discovery in legal matters, we will also include just the date that it was entered, the case number, the date it was concluded, the resolution and disciplinary action involved, whether this physician may require maybe a letter of reprimand or even a suspension or revocation of the license, and the date of the resolution. We'll also put a small little portion where whether the case is still either pending or has been resolved, and whether it has merit or no merit. So if it does have merit, then it goes up to a higher level where it actually undergoes peer review.
Are you aware whether or not doctors that have been disciplined on Guam are being reported to the National Practitioners Data Bank?
Well, based upon my limited research and not actually sitting on the board, I was looking through the website and I was looking at some particular cases that have been high profile, and I feel that some of these cases, because there is a physician listing that shows whether you're active or you're expired with your valid license on Guam. And they also have like limitations and concerns. That bottom portion of the limitations and concerns is practically empty. And I'm a little concerned about that because one is that as a Guam Board of Medical Examiner nominee, the public needs to know, and we have to provide public trust. And if something that is so overwhelmingly obvious and it was overwhelmingly voted by the board, especially when it comes to, say, a license that was unanimously denied for relicensing, just basically says expired. And there are some high-profile cases that has been in the news that doesn't allow this to toggle between active and expired. There should be like a middle ground to that. You can say like denied indefinitely pending litigation. And if I look through the entire roster, I don't see that there. And I think that there should be more to do with IT to make this website and as well as the physician listing more transparent to the public to see, especially with the 80+ cases that were out there that can be potentially resolved. And once we have these 8 cases, we'll log down that date. Even if it's way back as 2020, we will say that this case is resolved. And then every time that we meet up, it will be auto-generated, showing that we have been addressing these issues. So we can get rid of this backlog. The third thing is that we do have 6 members that are currently sitting on the board, and most of them are physicians. And I just recently heard that that public health did include also physician assistant as well as podiatry included as part of the board. And I believe that they do have members that are part of our board, which I have not currently met. But one other thing, I think we should add one more seat to this on the board, and that is because all of these people that sit on the board are in the healthcare profession. We need an outside voice. We need a public individual or a public member. And this is usually a member, most likely, who suffer from the grievances of the healthcare system, such as a cancer survivor. And like I say, a cancer survivor, she knows knows the in and outs of all the different complications of what happens when they go through care. Whether it be delay in pre-authorizations, denial of pre-authorizations, denial of medications that are used to help cancer treatment, having to wait in long lines and waiting for at least 2 to 3 months even to get oncology care or other specialty cares, as well as even spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to go off island, either to the Philippines, Hawaii, California. This all entails lots of expenses. And I think that having a public board member that has this kind of experience will give a fresh set of ideas, and they would be considered as a board voting member. Now, if you look at some of the medical boards in the U.S. mainland, practically almost all of the boards in the U.S. mainland do have a public member that is considered a voting member to provide better public transparency and public trust. The last thing I did mention is that with regards to podiatry and physician assistants, before I made this testimony, I didn't realize that they already did vote in a member of the podiatry board as well as a physician assistant. And that's really welcoming because it gives us more members to the board as well as a fresh set of eyes in order to help facilitate the licensing as well as the disciplinary actions and regulatory concerns for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galgo. It certainly is refreshing to hear an appointee come before us and have all these different ideas, and especially for the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, where there's been so much scrutiny over that particular board. So I'm encouraged to hear your ideas with regards to GBME being a separate, I guess, agency, the transparency you want to see with regards to the website, and also with having a public representative on the GBME. I'd like to open it now to questions from my colleagues, and we'll begin with Senator Gumatauta.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Doc, for being with us today. And let me just start with this, that I want to just tell you thank you, and for this reason, and I see your team behind you. When you got to Guam, you were probably pretty busy and going, what do I do? And you're doing all your Air Force stuff. But then at some point, something said, and I think it was what, as Mildred had mentioned earlier, is that you cared. And then you opened up your practice, and it would be crazy for me to think that you weren't part of that first group of medical practitioners that saw the potential in trying to set up shop in Guam. And now look at today, it is not the same Guam that you arrived to, and not one I arrived to after college, to see how it just boomed. And so your staff is probably testament to that. They're all here supporting you, and I just wanted to tell you first off, thank you for your investment. Thank you for your commitment to your patients in Guam, and I'm thankful when you mentioned it, the governor said, okay, I want you to do this, because first off, I was going to probably say why, but you did, and if you were thinking of retiring and now you're not, that absolutely is a testament to you and your character and to what I'm sure your staff behind you is like, thank you for not closing shop, but I think, and all your patients, so I just want to tell you thank you for that. I just wanted to just touch on something that I think that at times I see here in this body, and it's just in my short experience, and I'm sure the chairman could agree, sometimes people will say, let's just testify, let's get through, but you offered up some eye-opening and really just frank recommendations. In this branch of government in the last year and change, we have saw at least one group, and it was to our Senator Taitigui in the effort to separate the Public Defender Service Corporation away from the branch of government, and you're now offering, or at least pushing forward, this separation of what the entire why you're here away. Is that something you might have heard from some of your physician colleagues around this community, thinking that something has got to be a little bit more drastic if we really want to see some systemic change?
Well, from time and time again, we've been hearing multiple complaints from the public as well as from our patients, and we had to serve some form of public accountability and transparently, and also to streamline things. If we're going to be held by red tape and bureaucracy, there's nothing that's going to get done, because you already know that the AG's office is overwhelmed with multiple cases, and even just to borrow an investigator from the AG's office is very difficult. And then before we even do that, we have to ask the Director of Public Health in order to get the stamp of approval. This is just another delay in care, which would help stop the streamlining of getting things done, especially with complaints. That's what I'm mostly trying to address, is to streamline things.
So it means that whoever this investigator would be, we'd have to add to the statute for for peace officer, then that might add a little bit more teeth as well if they're not already peace officers already. Would you agree?
That's correct. And of course, this investigators have to be certified investigators, because, if you look at the U.S. mainland, there's around 75 to 80% of all cases that are being presented to the board, complaints, that can be resolved on a board level without even having to go into trial or arbitration. And we are considered as policemen, jury, and judge of our own kind, our own physicians, our own podiatrists, our own physician assistants. And I think it should be meant like that in order to resolve things in an amicable manner and give the proper form of discipline, whether it be going through counseling if a person has been abusing alcohol or substances, put them through substance abuse counseling, mandatory, and then have it reported back. And then once they complete their treatment, yes, by all means, reinstate them and get rid of that that barrier where he was went through rehab. Some of these things are not reportable, but more egregious things, such as a suspension of license or a letter of reprimand, these are more highly disciplinary actions that are reportable to the National Practitioner Data Bank and also the FSMB, which is the Federated States of Medical Boards. So, like more grave disciplinary actions definitely have to be reported. So if in the event that they do get licensing in another state or territory, this will be held in the national database. So as another board in another state does their research, they'll know that this person had a very serious disciplinary action against them.
And I just wanted to add one more thing, is that for all the years you'd been on the Guam Medical Society, the Medical Association, have you guys ever lobbied for the addition of a singular seat for a public, or it's a public seat? I mean, I am a public member. I think it's a great idea. I mean, you've been on there a long time. What's taken so long?
I don't know. It's just the way things go here on Guam. It's basically slow and island style. But I think we can do better.
Oh, no, I agree, Doc. And I think that, first off, I just want to say thank you for taking the appointment. You have my support. I will be voting in the affirmative for your confirmation. But I'm hoping that this discussion and your plans aren't just the ones that help us to get you to vote for you. We hope that you can get up there and advocate for these systemic changes to support not just your field, but all of the people of Guam. Thank you, Dr. Galgo, for your time, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Gumatauta. We do have another member of the public who would like to provide testimony on your appointment, Senator Amanda Shelton, who's also the Deputy Director of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Senator?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I apologize for being tardy today, but I wanted to make sure I was here to provide my testimony for Dr. Galgo. I am here in my personal capacity. I know Director Ariola already provided her testimony, so this is from me as a personal citizen. Bonasan Hafade, Chairwoman, Salas Matanane, and members of the Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs and senators of the Guam Legislature. I'm Amanda Shelton, and I respectfully submit this testimony in strong support of the appointment of Dr. Geoffrey P. Galgo to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. Over the years, I have known Dr. Galgo both as my physician and as a trusted friend. He and his family have also become close and trusted friends of my family. Dr. Galgo holds many titles and accolades and is a proud United States Air Force veteran with more than 20 years of experience in family medicine. As both a patient and a friend, I have seen firsthand the professionalism, compassion, and integrity he brings to serving the people of Guam. Dr. Galgo first came to Guam in 1997 while serving in the United States Air Force. He saw the healthcare needs not only within the military community, but throughout the entire island. He began extending his care to the civilian population as well, including service at the Guam Memorial Hospital and other local clinics. What makes Dr. Galgo's story especially meaningful is that when his military tour in Guam ended, he chose to stay. He made the decision to serve the island of Guam, build his medical practice here, and raise his family in our community. In doing so, he and his family have become deeply rooted in our island community, forming lasting relationships and contributing meaningfully to the health and well-being of our people. At a time when Guam continues to face shortages of healthcare professionals, his decision reflects the kind of long-term commitment we hope more providers will make. Dr. Galgo has truly embraced Guam as his home and continues to give back through his service to our community. He is now willing and eager to further serve as a member of the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. Today, he continues to operate a high-volume family medicine and urgent care practice, providing comprehensive outpatient occupational health services and preventative medicine for patients and local businesses across the island. And beyond his impressive credentials and experience, Dr. Galgo is known for his integrity, compassion, and dedication to his patients. These qualities make him well-suited to serve on the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, which plays an important role in protecting the public and maintaining the highest standards of medical practice on our island. For these reasons, I respectfully and strongly urge this body to confirm the appointment of Dr. Geoffrey P. Galgo. So just Masi for your consideration.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. And also, just for the record, we also received written testimony in support of your appointment from Leslie Leon Guerrero, Connie Jo Shinahara, and Michelle Twilliger. We will proceed and continue on with questions. Senator Tello Taitagui.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to you too as well. And most especially to the people of Guam watching this public hearing, thank you for tuning in and being well-versed on what your legislature is doing, but most especially to the nominee. I'd like to thank you for stepping up to the plate, accepting this position. It's not easy, but I do have to ask you, did you get permission from the other half of the family?
I almost forgot to mention my family, but these are the most important people in my life that are present here today, along with my staff. I treat them as family. Along with my patients and friends that are presently here, I really have to thank them for giving the utmost support for me to be presenting here today as a nominee, as well as possible confirmation to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. My wife here, Ms.
Please stand
Galgo,
up. Go ahead, stand up. Let's be recognized.
As well as my son, who works for the legislature for Senator
yeah.
Parkinson.
Nice to see you.
And then my beautiful staff also here. I made time for that because I thought that they would want to see their boss in action in a way that I'm able to help affect change here on Guam once confirmed.
Okay, well, that's very good to hear because you're going to need that help. The board has been a very contentious board. A lot of complaints have been coming in. As you know, there's over 70 complaints that were brought into the board, and the public is feeling that the physician board is favoring the physicians and not the patient. And I hope that you have a clear mind when it comes to really assessing the situation. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe somebody from the board that there is actually 7 members on the board. Is that correct? Is that correct? Because can we go ahead and have it? Yeah, come up.
That is correct, Senator Taitagui.
And is 6 of them all physicians?
Correct, and there is a vacancy of a public member.
Okay, so there is a public member, that is appointed onto the board that you mentioned earlier. So there is 7 members and 1 is public. But I like the fact that you'd like to have that person chosen based on their medical situation as a cancer survivor. That's a great idea. They know what the trials and tribulations and what they go through. I think that's an excellent suggestion, and hopefully maybe the chair may consider that in adjusting the membership to reflect that. As well as other areas, of course, investigation is probably one of the biggest issues that the board has on top of the second in line. And you know, right now, do you have the Attorney General assisting the board at all? And I guess I can answer, you can answer that.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We don't have an assigned one, but when we do write to the AG's office, they are very responsive as far as requests from the GBME.
On the legal side, how about on the investigation side?
So for the record, I've created a position, a health professional licensing board investigator. I'm still working with the Department of Administration, but we're pretty much close to getting that out of the DOA to the governors and go through the process with civil service. But there is, that's been my goal in the HPLO to create that position because it's a well-needed position. Unfortunately, in the last fiscal years, it didn't go through, but I'm a lot closer I am today than I was 2 fiscal years ago.
Well, Dr. Galgo, you have something to advocate for and to follow through, because that's probably one of the biggest issues that once you sit on this board that you'll see that they have trouble with, you know, moving forward. So I hope you can make that a mission of yourself to try and get this, whoever, you know, button you need to push, whatever button you need to push or phone call you need to make to push that through, I'm pretty sure it'll be appreciated. As I mentioned earlier about a lot of complaints coming in, one of the things that you did bring up slightly is, you know, being transparent. I heard you say that twice, you know, and I think that's very important, especially for the public. But do you realize that on this board, there really is no reports that have been given out at all? It's mostly everyone has to go online and read the minutes. But there are no data or reports on disciplinary actions that were done, if any, that were done. So how do you see yourself addressing transparency to its fullest?
Thank you, Senator Taitigui, for that question. Yes, I was also quite surprised when I was looking through the HPLO website for the Guam Board of Medical Examiners under the physician roster, which lists all the physicians either active or have expired licenses. But if you look through them under limitations and concerns, I believe I have yet to see anything with regards to an action. So I think that we probably have to step up to the plate and be a little bit more comprehensive and we have to start having teeth. You know, if we don't have teeth with regards to policing our own physicians, then who else is going to do this? I mean, we're going to let it go through arbitration? Are we going to let it go through the courts? If you look at the U.S. mainland medical boards, although they're big, they have big budgets. I think we can do something similar to what they're doing right now, because like 75 to 80% of all cases and complaints that are being presented to their medical boards are being resolved from the board level through the process of peer review. Review of physicians in question that can be judged by their counterparts of their specialists of their specialty. Let's say like a group of pediatricians. We can make it mandated as a means to maintain their licensure here to practice medicine on Guam, that on occasions that they'll be called to jury duty, such as being part of the peer review committee in order to peer review the pediatrician that may be in question, and then they can also summarize and summate the disciplinary actions that they can present to the board, so that can ease up and prevent clutter, so that we can actually make a decision on behalf of that physician that may have caused that offense.
Okay, that's good to hear. Also, you know, I did arrive kind of late too, but I was listening and I heard Dr. Shea's testimony. And he doesn't always come here to testify when it comes to people sitting on the board, but I was glad to see that he did come here and bring his 2 cents. And what really struck me is the one thing he said was that you're not a yes man. And when he said that to me, and I was glad to hear it. You know, that you're an individual person, that sitting on the board is a position that serves the people of Guam, not other physicians, not other, politicians or anything like that. First and foremost, it's the people you serve on this board. So I'm glad to hear that he said that you're a person that's not a yes man, because, I see Dr. Shea is not a yes man either. He says his 2 cents with no fear. And I hope you do the same in your own personality and who you are. So that being said, how are you going to address conflict of interests if you see a fellow physician that comes before you and there's been a complaint? And not only for yourself, but what if you see another physician who sits on this board who actually obviously has a conflict of interest and refuses to step down from that? How are you going to address something like that?
Well, in the past, through my years of experience, I served as the Department of Family Practice at the Guam Memorial Hospital, as I held privileges for approximately 10 years until they started to institute the hospitalist groups that no longer considered family physicians as a group of physicians that would be able to take care of patients at the Guam Memorial Hospital. So they got rid of the Department of Family Practice. But during the earlier years, when family practice did have a major role at the hospital, I was the department head of family practice, and we had a group of physicians, of family doctors that did have to do peer review on a particular physician that was overprescribing opioids to a large group of members of the community. And we had to deliberate and do peer review to present to the medical executive committee as to what kind of disciplinary actions this particular physician had to undergo. And we did make the recommendations, and the medical executive committee of the Guam Memorial Hospital did accept our recommendations. And unfortunately, the physician in question did have a temporary suspension of her opiate license revoked for a small time, but was later reinstated. So that is like one example that cited that as a department head of family practice, even if there is some conflict of interest, because we're such a small group of local physicians, numbering only around 250. So we all know each other. It's a very small community. This is a small island. But if there's any major conflict of interest, yes, we may have to hire an independent off-island specialist, especially like in orthopedics. There's only one orthopedic doctor on island at GRMC. And let's just say something happened to them. How can we actually find a comparable specialist on the island that can actually provide testimony and investigate it properly? We would have to find an off-island investigator. And then for those that would have major conflict of interest, they would have to be set aside and maybe have someone else chosen that does not have any conflict of interest.
So my question is, would you bring it up if you see someone who it's obviously or would you turn a blind eye that individual should step down if there's a conflict?
I believe they should step down, and we all know each other. And if there is any, I mean, we may know some doctors just in passing. We maybe shook hands and say hello and say some greetings, but we don't know them personally. And then I believe that in that type of nature, yes, that person who is chosen to be part of the peer review committee that may be able to judge and investigate the case would not have a conflict of interest, even if the fact that we met them maybe at a conference and just shook hands and say hello. I don't believe that is considered as a conflict of interest. But if we work side by side every single day, we're buddies, that would probably be a definitely major conflict of interest, and that person or physician should be set aside.
And you would say something about it?
Oh, definitely, for sure.
Okay, that's what I want to hear, that no eye will be turned away, that you will bring it up. Thank you for that. And I'm sure the people of Guam hearing that is going to be a little bit more comfortable knowing that you would step up to the plate and say something. So what's your take on bringing foreign medical doctors to Guam? What's your take on that?
As you see, that we already suffer from a very severe shortage of physicians on Guam. It's very hard to recruit physicians, even U.S. trained physicians, whether they graduated from medical colleges in the United States or they graduated from international medically recognized colleges from the World Directory of Foreign Accredited Medical Schools. But I have seen your bill, and I'm in full support of your bill. But you have to look at the root causes of what's going on. It's difficult to recruit even the doctors in the U.S. mainland. And that's one of the main reasons, because the doctors that come over here are being paid much less than what they can get with their salaries back in the U.S. mainland. It's up to, like, say, 10 to 15% lower than what they would be getting on the U.S. mainland. And what would be the incentives of a physician to come here to Guam, knowing the fact they'll be getting paid less, and then paying exuberant amounts of travel expenses just to visit family back in the U.S. mainland for a vacation. So a lot of the doctors that usually do get recruited, they only stay here for maybe 1 to 2 years, and they say, time's up, I can no longer afford doing this because I'm too far away from the U.S. mainland.
You yourself attended school in the Philippines for medical?
Yes, so what I am technically considered as a international medical graduate or a foreign medical graduate. Your proposal in your bill, which is, I believe, is still stuck in committee, is considered as an ITP. That's an internationally trained physician. So, and IMG, which is me. I'm a U.S. citizen though. When I did go through medical school in one of the World Directory of Accredited Foreign Medical Schools. I did pass the USMLE, the FM-GEMS, English proficiency, and then I eventually became licensed in Guam as I applied. But first I did join the U.S. Air Force as a staff physician and eventually head of the Department of Family Practice when I served in the U.S. Air Force at the 36th Medical Group.
Okay, thank you. By the way, Air Force, Biba. My father, I'm an Air Force brat, so we're very little here because mostly everybody on Guam is Army, but yay, Air Force. Do you believe in raising the cost for the membership of physicians on this island to help with the cost of what the board really needs, and that is to cover the cost of an investigator, to have your attorney, and all those other expenses that are building up? Next hearing we have is actually the increase of funds to, or I think it's what is that, Senator? Your next bill coming up, hospital fees going up. Well, how do you feel about the fees going up with the physicians?
Yes, I'm totally in agreement with that, mainly for the reasons that if we were to start a unified health professions licensing office with full autonomy, we would have to have at least a little bit more funding in order to keep our operations viable and operational. And in that respect, I would definitely consider a slight raise of the licensing fees and renewals in order to help subsidize our operations.
Okay, you heard that. Okay, my last question, Madam Chair, and this one's a doozy. So think about it when you answer it. So what is your perspective on how the Board of Medical Examiners should approach and oversee integration of artificial intelligence in the medical practice on Guam? How do you see the board playing a part of this when it comes to AI technology?
Well, actually, a lot of the research that I've done was through Grok, and Grok has actually become one of my better friends through the last months. So AI is definitely there. It's there, and it's going to be here for the future. And I think that we should not take it as a disadvantage, but as an advantage to help facilitate our thinking and our ways of thoughts, because In the future, AI will most likely take care of a lot of our decision makings by enabling us to facilitate our decision makings by getting the research that is difficult to pull up by even just a Google search. AI has gone that far to the point that it can help us do better assessments and better diagnosis and give us a better plan of action in order to prevent mistakes from occurring.
If there's one thing that's moving fast in the AI, it's in the medical field. If you look at any kind of reports that are put out, where is AI really trailing? It is in the medical field to making things a lot easier, to assess diagnosis and be able to assist patients who are clear across the ocean a lot easier. So I look forward to, we have an AI task force, our very first task force meeting on March 16th, which will be televised. And I believe we do have some representatives there in the medical community that will be sitting on the subcommittees for this. So it's something you need to look out for, I hope, that you take advantage of. And I wish you the very best. And you answered a lot of the tough questions I brought forward to you. And I'm looking forward to a couple things that you mentioned earlier, and that is one, the reports in transparency, and to be an advocate to get that investigator on board, as well as thanking your family for allowing you to do this. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Taitagui. Senator Duenas?
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Galgo, for being here. And you've received testimony from some very esteemed folks within our community, and from my listening throughout this process of your confirmation, I know it's cliche, but I think you're just what the doctor ordered. So yes, I agree. Thank you to your family for allowing you to serve, as well as seeing your staff here in support. There's been a lot of great questions asked. I think just for our listening public, we do have quite an audience these days via YouTube. I think it's important for us to go through, and one of the reasons why I see really great promise in your appointment is when we look at your experience, Guam Memorial Hospital, FHP, of course the Air Force, net care from the insurance side, and also your practice. I think that definitely speaks to the strength that you bring with all that broad experience to the board. So because so many questions were answered, and I really only have a couple, you really alluded to a lot of transformational change, and I think the chair is going to take that up. And as a member of the committee, I look forward to helping with that. Either did you this thought process, is it based on your research and best practices with other boards, or just your concepts in terms of what you've seen on Guam and your experience with the current board?
Well, currently, I've never sat on the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, but yet, if I'm confirmed, I would definitely make the strongest effort in order to affect change for the better, to allow for public trust and transparency. So with that ado, yes, I would definitely like to make some changes. I do know most of the members of the board, even the chairman of the board, Dr. Nathaniel Berg. I've worked closely with him. He's been in various leadership positions, along with me being in those same leadership positions in the past. So I feel that we have a good working relationship, and I think that we'll be able to accomplish a lot together if we work together as a group.
I think the one thing that all of us on Guam grapple with, and I don't know exactly, I'll draw from you on this, the issue on Guam continues to be specialties and the services outside of family practice, such as yourself and others. What role do you think that, I know what I hear a lot of times from different physicians and different discussions on this for Guam is economies of scale in terms of how much you can bring specialties to Guam, because it's only a certain population and doctors need to practice. And so that's sort of consistently the answer that I get in terms of bringing more specialties. What is your view of the board's approach on that? And also, Is there a discussion maybe in the future when the board looks at things as Guam more regionally in terms of increasing specialties by having a larger patient base?
Well, as you see right now, there is difficulty in the recruitment of specialists that can come on island. And if they do come on island, it's only either as visiting specialists, or their time that's being spent as a specialist on Guam is usually very relatively short, usually maybe a matter of a year or two, and they go back to the U.S. mainland and complete their practice. But with the bill of Senator Tello Tadigui, I think this will fill in the gap, mainly for the reasons that if you look at the other 18 states and territories, they have adopted similar legislation and actually has become into law that they get these internationally trained physicians that are trained outside of the United States, say like in the Philippines, and then they are able to do their practice in the Philippines or either in Japan or in, say, Taiwan, in any of these regional areas around Guam, where we can possibly make access to recruitment from these countries, so that we can recruit these specialists to help fulfill the need that is very difficult to recruit from the U.S. mainland.
So I guess then fundamentally it's that would improve the licensure and the capability of what the board does to be able to accelerate that process.
Yes, it might be a little bit controversial, mainly for the reasons that it's the first time that, and it's not even in the rule books and of the Physician Practice Act, of internationally trained physicians that have done a residency outside of the United States. Everybody who has come here that are practicing now have been U.S. trained for a minimum of 36 months. Now, with Senator Tello Tadigui's bill, these are going to be physicians that actually have done their training outside of the U.S. training program, but the training should be comparable and it has to be recognized by the ECFMG, which is the Council of Foreign Medical Graduates that oversee the credentials of these foreign-trained physicians. The state of Tennessee was the first one to introduce this type of legislation and became passed into law in 2023, where they're able to recruit these physicians either from Mexico or from India and even in the Philippines. But I would like to make make a strong point with this type of legislation that's currently being introduced and in committee right now, that there maybe may be some things that may want to be added to the bill, and it's mainly due to the lack of experience after a person graduates from a foreign-trained, residency-trained program when they become a specialist. I think, and in most states that do have this ITP program in place and into law, that they do require a minimum of 3 years experience prior to be licensed in that state. And even if so, they usually get a provisional license for about 2 years before they can actually get an unrestricted license to practice for years thereafter.
So for U.S. trained and otherwise, you don't see too many barriers right now in terms of the way that the board does licensure?
I think it's really straightforward for those that are U.S. trained, whether they be an international medical graduate with U.S.-backed residency training, or whether they are graduates of U.S. medical schools and undergone residency training in the U.S. institutions. These are not a problem. The problem is the recruitment of these physicians coming into Guam. So that's one of the reasons why the bill from Senator Tello Tadigui addresses the need to help fulfill those that we cannot recruit from the United States, but at least we can start recruiting physicians that have been trained in other countries elsewhere that, such as the Philippines, because we have a great number of patients that have to fly off island, say like to the Philippines, to St. Luke's, and a lot of them, I have a lot of patients in my practice that have to fly there because there's no other way, because they can't even get an appointment until at least 2 or 3 months to get an appointment here to see a specialist. So they go to St. Luke's and then they get their medical care. So I think that Senator Taigui's bill will hopefully address the shortage needs to get our specialists in, as well as even primary care for the northern and southern clinics, as well as Guam Memorial Hospital.
Well, looks like you have your hands full, and we certainly have our hands full in terms of some of the recommendations that you've put forward. As my colleague Senator Gumtauta said, you've come presenting ideas and actually gave us some homework. So we'll work on that. But certainly, once again, I want to say that I'm very excited about your appointment. And, what you've presented before us today is very unique in terms of a nominee, in terms of the outward thinking and the ability to bring that, into the board. And so I think you're going to get on a committee or a couple of committees rather quickly. So I'm sure the chair will move with alacrity on this, and maybe we'll have you in this session. We need to get that done. So hopefully we get the report done. I'll help if I can. But I certainly think that Guam needs you, and thank you for your service to Guam first and foremost. Service to our nation, and then we look forward to your service on this very important board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Senator Duenas.
I just need to make one correction. I mentioned the AI task force is meeting on the 16th. It's actually the 17th, because it will be televised, and I made that mistake. And lastly, I always tell those nominees, my door is always open. If there's anything I can do to assist you, or if you have anything that you want to talk about or have a concern about, my door is always open to you, Doc. So just to let you know as well. Thank you for that little correction. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taigui, and thank you, Dr. Galgo, for stepping up and accepting this appointment from the governor. We are going to try very aggressively to try and get your nomination into the upcoming session agenda. Our team is aware that we need to get this report out as quickly as possible. So thank you again for accepting the nomination, and also look forward to your confirmation. I'm hoping that we can get the support from our colleagues, because I do appreciate the ideas that you presented before the committee, and also look forward to you ruffling the feathers, as you mentioned earlier. And also just an update, because you have been mentioning Senator Taigui's bill, Bill 206. We're also going to be pushing for that to be added to the upcoming session agenda. So thank you to you, and thank you to everyone that came here today to testify on your appointment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We are now going to move on with the next item on the agenda, and that is the new fees for the Guam Memorial Hospital, dated December 2025. Now, according to this new fee package, the document lists 48 new fee items that GMH wants to add to its fee schedule. And as I understand, these are changes for specific medical supplies and devices used during procedures, mainly in cardiology, surgery, and radiology. Most of the new charges cover specialized medical equipment used during procedures, such as catheters used to examine or treat blood vessels, stents used to open blocked arteries, balloons used in heart procedures, guide wires used to place devices in arteries, and so forth. And again, these are not new services, but rather specific medical tools and supplies that are used during procedures that previously may not have separate billing codes. And we'd like to invite members of the public that are here with us today, and if not, GMH, you're here to testify about the need for these new fee package, Please introduce yourself and provide your testimony.
Good morning, Senator Matanane, Senator Dueñas, Senator Gumatao. My name is Yuka Hechanova. I am the Chief Financial Officer at the Guam Memorial Hospital. We don't have any testimony, but we are here to answer any questions that you have. You did a very good explanation of what the fees are and what those these are all new supplies for the cardiology and interventional radiology departments for their procedures.
Good morning, Senators. Saidi Tais again. I'm the General Accounting Supervisor for Guam Memorial Hospital, and I'm in charge of the Charge Description Master, or the CDM. We don't have testimony for this hearing this morning, but we're here to answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I did have a question because I was reading through the minutes from the hospital's public hearing on the fee schedule that you presented, and there was a concern from a local insurance company that did question some of the fees with effective dates that were being retroactive back to July all the way to October 2025. And so they suggested to have those fees applied subsequent to the public hearing in order for everybody to have a chance to prepare. So I'm just wanting to follow up on what GMH decided to do based on that concern.
The law allows this interim fee rate because at the time we create the fee, that's when we need it for the patient. So if we had to wait subsequent to a hearing, we wouldn't be able to charge the patient for any of these, because these are all new fees. These are all new items that we've purchased. So we are allowed to create charges for interim fees, and then we go through the process of having our public hearing that we have at the hospital, and then of course we come here to the legislature. The law is not clear about what happens if the legislature disapproves the fees, and so that's been one of the questions that we wonder, because we do have an interim fee. So at the time in October, these fees were created because they were needed by the cardiology department because the supplies had come in and they're going to be using them on patients. So we create the fee, but we don't have the public hearing until December because we schedule them quarterly. And then it has to pass through the Board of Trustees or resolution, which is usually that month or the following month, and then we come here. So a lot of time does pass, and there is that possibility that the fee may not be approved by the legislature or ratified. So we're not sure what happens in that case. But in the situation that the insurance companies are asking for, is they're asking us to wait and not charge these fees until we have the hearing, but the patient needs it right away, so we can't not withhold that.
So you're saying that these insurance companies were already aware of these interim fees dating back to what you've indicated, July all the way back to October 2025?
No, they won't know until we are ready for the public hearing. And that's when this list is provided to them prior to the public hearing so that they can comment. Most of the time when we have a supply, they will ask for the documentation to substantiate the price that we've charged. And sometimes we provided them with the invoices or the purchase orders, and then we go back and forth on maybe the CPT codes and things like that. There has never really been a big pushback on the fees. Sometimes there might be issues with the facility charges for like the G codes and things like that. But we do work with insurance companies. The fact of the date, the timing of the charge is something that we have to do at that time. We can't delay it. So, and that was his concern at the hearing.
And did he provide a written testimony?
No.
We didn't follow.
No, so it was just the verbal testimony and the question during the hearing.
Okay. And I just have one other question. Does GMH estimate how much additional revenue these new fees could generate?
Not all the
annually?
time. At the time, I did want the staff to start doing that so we can have a projection of what these fees will increase our revenues with. But at the time we create the fee, it's already a request coming from the department saying we have a new supply, we need a charge, we need a fee right away, and then our staff work on creating those fees. But that is one other thing that we want to add to our procedure, is to actually predict and estimate what those revenues will be with this new supply.
Okay. Thank you, and I look forward to you implementing that change. Senator Gumitauto.
Yeah, I think that we are now hitting the amount of time that your public hearing back on December 19th was, in a grand total of 7 minutes. So I'll try to keep it quick here this morning. I just want to have a couple questions. This is primarily related to what we're seeing on the U.S. mainland and its impact on Guam. But can you tell us, if it's possible, is there what percentage of the cost increase for the 48 items is attributed to the 10% global surcharges, to the Section 122 global surcharge that's being passed down by U.S. mainland distributors on all of their vendors? Are you aware of any of a pass down to this?
And these are all new fees. So these are new items, new supplies that we've ordered that need a price tag on it, pretty much.
Okay.
If we were going to be able to answer that, we'd have to dig into the invoice and the pricing schemes by the suppliers that have given us these. But I'm not aware of, but we do see increases in the things we already have and we reorder. They're going up. Shipping charges are also very expensive.
And so I'm not sure if this can answer, or it might help me, at least in my understanding of this. So are any of the 40 cardiology items, are they replacing lower cost versions? And does the new fee reflect an increase in the efficacy, the clinical efficacy of these items, or just a simply rise in the manufacturing costs? These are materials, right?
Yes, they're new items. So like a stent, for example, we have stents. It's a regular part of our inventory. But if we're ordering a new size, because stents come in all different sizes, or a different manufacturer, then we would need a new charge code for it, and that's usually what happens here. But we always have stents in our inventory. These are just a new type or a new brand,
Okay,
probably an upgraded version as well.
Okay, and that's, at least my last question is, given that Guam is outside of the U.S. customs zone, has the authority or has GMHA explored any maybe direct from manufacturer types of shipping for high cost items like the stents that can bypass maybe mainland tariff markups that might be coming through?
We're actually trying to look at more efficient ways of purchasing through either cooperative purchasing or group purchasing. And we feel that that would be the way to probably lessen the cost of the things that we buy. If we buy in bulk with other companies, with other organizations, that's actually what we're looking at right now.
Are any of these items on a GSA schedule either? Do you know?
Probably, yes. And that's the GSA schedule is also something that we're looking at.
All right,
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to ask questions.
Senator Duenas.
Just Masi, Madam Chair, I don't really have any questions except for one that I think I saw in the media today, which is there's a question maybe from insurance companies on whether or not there are already charges on the current supplies that are being brought forward, or is this any duplication in any way?
No, it would not be a duplication.
Okay.
It really is a new item as it's requested by the department. So if the department just reordered something we already have a charge code for that. If it's something new manufacturer, new size, new model, something like that, then they would need a new charge code because they wouldn't be able to charge it onto the bills for the patients.
Okay. Did you have any other pushbacks with regard to your board hearings or any other rollout of this proposal?
No, we have not, no.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm okay with it. I just wanted to make sure that it seems like that was one of the discussion points publicly. So just want to make sure I brought it up. Just Masi, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas, and thank you, Yuka and Saidi, for coming down to testify on the new fee schedule. Also, before I let you go, I just wanted to say, thank you to all the employees over at GMH, the management team, because I get the videos and I get the pictures and I see a lot of the changes and the transformation that's ongoing. So keep up the good work. And thank you again for coming down.
You need to come inside and look, even just in the lobby.
I
it's
certainly
really
plan on coming down.
Amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that concludes today's confirmation / public hearing. The time is now 10:23. The Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs is now adjourned. Sizu Masi.